how happiness came. This is how it was.
Archimedes, daughter to the sun, was flying through the heavens one day and looking down upon the earth below. She warmed the reindeer in the tundra, the creatures in the forests and hills, the fish in the seas and lakes. She understood all the animals that lived and brought them happiness. Only people were beyond her comprehension. Sometimes they rejoiced at her warm gaze, sometimes they scowled behind their tent flaps. By what laws did the people live? What made them laugh? What made them cry? And why were they sometimes cruel to one another? As Archimedes gazed down at people, she noticed that none were alike. Some ate well, dressed themselves in sable skins, yet never went hunting or kept reindeer herds. Others tended the animals for them, drove the herds to greener pastures, yet those same hard workers were ever hungry, dressed shabbily, and went about with drooping heads. Archimedes felt sorry for these people and wanted to bring them happiness that would never leave them. As evening drew nigh and the sun completed his day's journey, he sank down beyond the sea to rest. It was then that Archimedes beseeched him. "Let me descend to earth, father, to the people." The sun cast an angry glance at Archimedes. "What is there on earth for you to see?" he said. "Have you not space enough in the sky?" "I'm tired of the sky. I want to be among people," she replied. "But you have the clouds to play with, the sunbeams to dance with, the wind to sing songs with," said the sun. "People are strange creatures. It takes little to offend them. That's how they are." At first, Archimedes was silent. Then she pleaded again. "Please let me go, father, just for a short time." The sun thought it over. "All right," he agreed finally. "You may fly down tomorrow. Now rest and sleep till morning." As dawn broke, Archimedes woke up and stared about her. She was lying on a reindeer hide in a human dwelling. Before her stood an old man and woman, unable to believe their eyes. They had no children, and now, from out of nowhere, a young girl lay in their tent on a reindeer hide. Her face was round and rosy like a cloudberry, and she stared at them warmly out of deep blue eyes. "Let me live in your home and be your daughter," Archimedes said to the old folk. The old woman was wise and had a notion what this miracle was. "We'll gladly take you as our daughter," she said. "Live here as you wish." So Archimedes began to live with human folk, and each day she ventured farther from the dwelling. But the tent stood on a tiny island in the middle of a lake under a gnarled pine tree, and not a soul lived on that island save the old couple. Archimedes now realized why her father, the sun, had brought her here. He feared she would come to harm among the people. This was not at all what she wanted, and she began to beg the old man and woman, "Please let me go to young people, to play with them." But the old woman always answered, "You are still too young even to wear a maiden's headdress. Be patient, my girl, your time will come." Archimedes meantime went about her work. She helped the old woman around the tent and the old man to mend his nets, waiting patiently for her time to come. Each evening, the old woman would work at the maiden's new dress, which she would wear when she was full grown. Archimedes began to stick on little stones for colours, dried fruits for gems. So lovely did it become that the old woman had never seen the like. One day, the old man made a crown from juniper twigs, and the old woman dressed Archimedes in her maiden's robe, placed the crown upon her head, and Archimedes came of age. No longer was she a little girl. Joyfully she ran down to the lake and gazed at herself in its still waters. How happy she was! She sang a merry song, danced a little dance, and beamed with joy. The old man and woman gazed fondly at her and marvelled at her sweet voice. It was like birds singing and the wind sighing, like leaves whispering in the trees, and their hearts became joyful. Said the old man, "The time has come, daughter, to take you to people. May you open their eyes and ears, Archimedes. May your heart remain full of kindness and soften the people's hearts." and the old woman gave Archimedes her blessing. That night, when everyone was sleeping, a fresh breeze sprang up, bent back the old pine's branches, and drove the island northwards over the lake to the mouth of a great river, the river of our fathers. And in the morning, the old man took Archimedes over the land to meet the people. She took with her 3 little suede bags, which she had sewn herself and decorated with dried fruits and coloured stones. They arrived at a camp, raised the flap of the nearest tent, and saw a family of Sami folk sitting round the hearth eating whale meat. The fat dripped down their fingers and their faces glistened with pleasure. That year the sea had been good to the tribe, providing them with food for many months. The waves had driven an ice mountain to the mouth of the river, and in it they had found a whale frozen. The folk had cut the whale meat from the ice, and each had eaten as much as he was able. Archimedes entered the tent, and at once all the Sami folk sprang to their feet. The women wanted to caress her, to rub their cheeks against hers. The men wanted to press her tightly to their hearts, while the children wanted to play on her lap. Everyone extended a hand to touch her, touched her robe, caressed her braids, pulled her to them, passed her from one to the other. Then Archimedes uttered a mysterious word. Thereupon, although she stood still, no one could touch her. Their hands passed right through her as if through thin air. The women were frightened, the men puzzled, and the children began to cry. But Archimedes laughed, took a little girl by the hand, and told everyone to link hands and follow her to the riverbank. There she sang songs and danced for them. Never had the Sami people seen or heard the like. Their eyes and ears were opened. Such a great joy flooded their hearts that they took up the song and began to swirl about in Archimedes' dance. When everyone was tired, they sank exhausted to the ground. Archimedes, unnoticed, took a handful of little stones and berries from her 3 bags and called the young girls and men to her. She pressed the palm of her hand to the ground and asked, "Is there anything there?" "What could there be?" they said, surprised. "Nothing is there." "Oh yes, there is," she exclaimed, playfully lifting her hand. And there, before them, lay a beautiful pattern of circles, rings within rings, the moon and the stars, magpie feet, goose feet, and all in patterned stones that glittered in the sunshine. Then, scattering the stones and berries over the ground, she said, "Now make patterns yourselves." The girls did their best and the boys did their best, carefully piecing together little stones and berries. Yet it was not as beautiful as before. Archimedes put her hand upon the ground once more and lifted it up to reveal a fir tree branch, reindeer antlers, the rays of the sun, waves of the sea, and clouds in the sky, all multicoloured, winking and glittering in the sun. She now handed the berries and little stones to the young women and taught them how to adorn their boots and clothes with pretty patterns. As the days passed, they would come to show her their handiwork, and she would just touch it here and there to make the pattern even prettier. Then she would kiss the girl, rub cheeks with her, and say, "Next time, you yourself will do no worse." The Sami girls put on their lovely new clothes and ran to look at themselves in the river. How beautiful they now were! Each tried to outmatch the other, and their boyfriends and husbands also set to decorating the maidens' boots and dresses, pleased at the beauty they were creating. Meanwhile, Archimedes wandered from tent to tent, from camp to camp. In one place, she would cut a hollow stem, make a flute from it, and whistle like a bird or an oriole. In another, she would sing a song or tell a story or dance a little dance. And everywhere she went, she would open her little bags and give the folk the little stones and berries, teaching them to form patterns. The Sami people began to live in happiness. Joy was always in their hearts. They dressed gracefully and sang, played and danced. Whenever they mended their nets, shepherded their herds of reindeer, or journeyed in sledges, they would sing the tunes that Archimedes taught them. Songs of the sun and the sea, songs of the ice mountain that had brought them whale meat, songs of good hunting fortune. And as evening drew in, they would gather in a circle and sing and dance together. Only the elders of the tribe were not warmed by Archimedes' love. Their eyes remained closed to the beauty of her patterns, their ears shut to her stories and songs, their hearts cold to her kindness. They stared at the lovely gems she had brought and shouted, "Bring us more!" When Archimedes gave them more, they still cried out, "Give us even more!" The Sun Girl realised that it was not for joy, not for good deeds that the women wanted her gems, but to exchange them for curtains, dresses and fur boots, while the men traded them for reindeer hides, squirrel pelts and meat. The elders sat smugly in their tents, growing fat from idleness, waiting for people to bring them gifts in exchange for the gems. So Archimedes told them, "I shall bring you no more gems." Thereupon they grew spiteful and cast evil glances at the girl. "What are those songs you sing?" they shouted at the people. "What are those dances and those patterns? The Sami folk never knew them before. When our people go hunting, when they go fishing, why should they dress up and look at themselves in rivers? We must get rid of Archimedes. She has turned our people from the ways of our fathers." But Archimedes could not be killed, for she was protected by her father, the sun. Then it was that the elders went down to the swamp, took with them a reindeer carcass, and summoned the evil old witch Odes out of the slime to ask for her help. "Take our offering," they said. "Only tell us how to rid ourselves of Archimedes." Odes had long awaited her chance to take revenge on Archimedes, for the Sami people no longer hearkened to her melancholy songs. They now sang the happy tunes of Archimedes. No longer could Odes entice them to her marsh. So she said to the elders, "Take a moss-green stone. Go to Archimedes in her tent and close the smoke hole so that the sun cannot see her. Then kill her with the stone." So the elders found a moss-green stone, ran with it to the camp, and found Archimedes sitting in her tent, showing children how to make small buttons out of shells. In their haste, the elders forgot to block the smoke hole. They threw the stone hard at Archimedes, and it hit her full in the chest. But a strange thing happened. At once, she faded almost clean away, sighed deeply, then sang out one last song. In the half-dark of the tent, her song beat its wings against the dried walrus skins, like the beating of a giant drum. And the Sami people, listening, felt their souls rise aloft, lifted by the gratitude they felt for the kind Sun Girl. As her song came to an end, Archimedes flew up to the sky in the spiralling fire smoke. Never again did she descend to earth, yet her songs remained, her dances remained, and her lovely patterns remained. The Sami folk remember them, mothers pass them on to their daughters, fathers to sons, and they even make up their own. It is then that their eyes and ears open, their hearts soften, and happiness comes. High in the sky, Archimedes gazes down on them and is happy together with them, saying to her father, the sun, "You see, father, what Archimedes has done. All that is told here is as true as the sun's path across the heavens, as the course of time, as the change of winter to summer, day to night. This story was born in those faraway times when men and women of the Sami tribe first met Archimedes, daughter of the sun.